Hi, welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman, your host. Well, most of the big lake races have been completed. We're back now looking at local races in and around the Great Lakes, and we're going to check in on a number of activities. We first talked to the folks at Bayview who participated and put together a weekend called Women on Water for the 20th time. And Lynn Kotwicki, who started it originally at Bayview, was a part of what has been a terrific program over the last 20 years, the last couple of decades. And we were part of that both as a spectator and getting a chance to cover it. And my better half was actually a participant on Saturday and learned a great deal about match racing from one of the best sailors America's ever produced on the female side, and that certainly is Dawn Riley. We talked to Dawn briefly, and we'll check in with her and a number of the other participants of the weekend. And a special shout out to two people. Lori Bunn. Lori is part of the fleet committee at Bayview, and she certainly did a great job putting it together. She was kind of the point person for a lot of these kinds of activities. And we wanted to thank her because we think it was a great opportunity to spend some time at Bayview and working just around the area and kind of having some fun. We also want to say thank you to Trey Rose because Trey provided us with a number of shots from drones and other parts of the camera world that he uses. And I think the visual part of that show, I think will be enjoyable to watch. And we thank Trey for that. We hope you guys will check out Trey's information because I think he does great work. So we wanted to thank that group. We're also going to check in with Lee Greening, who is the Vice Commodore for the Edison Boat Club, which put on their Friday night race, and a little bit of an unusual. Most UIRA races are on Saturday or Sunday, but this was on a Friday night. And about 60 boats came out on an unbelievable night, and we have a little bit of video of that. We're going to talk about the 109th running of that race, and I think you'll enjoy the video, especially with one of the cruise ships going in behind the boats that were racing just off a crescent. I think you'll like those pictures, and Lee gives us an explanation. And then we're going to finish off with Dwayne Burgoyne. Dwayne is a friend of mine who was a former Commodore at North Cape Yacht Club. Dwayne is one of the most knowledgeable sail guys that I know. And we're going to bring you a new service called Other Opinions. We're going to pick a subject every week and kind of have a conversation, hopefully neophyte to expert. Maybe some of the conversation raises some discussion at the dock, over the water cooler. We'll try to bring a new feature to Inside Great Lakes Sailing. We hope you enjoy it. It's conversations that Dwayne and I have had now for probably 2 years over the phone or, on a boat, wherever it might be. And it's just kind of hot stove topics that we think might be interesting. We all have our opinions, and certainly Dwayne and I have ours, so that we hopefully will enjoy other voices in that feature. That said, we'll get going here in a second with the folks from Bayview and Women on Water, so we'll be back in a second. Talking briefly with Lori Bunn, who is the fleet director here for 2023 for Bayview.
It's a long title. Fleet and Regatta Sailing Director.
Okay.
It's a flag officer position, volunteer.
You're kind of the point person for Women on Water, and I just wanted to get a few comments. Obviously, lots goes into this. We're not going to be around for Sunday. This is Saturday after the clinic with Dawn Riley.
Yeah.
40 women, give or take?
We had a max of 32 because we used 8 boats. So only 4 people per boat. So we had to max it out, and we actually did have a wait list. So if we had more boats in rotation, we were still working on a lot of our boats right now because we have a grade 1 match race here. The first time the D Cup has ever been grade 1 is next weekend, so it's going to be an awesome event. It's our big thing next weekend.
This was the 20th event.
20th anniversary.
20th, that's a lot of events. When you go through something like this as a coordinator, what's your goal for your students?
Well, every year it's different. We kind of pool the crowd and ask them what they want. Because this was the 20th, we did match racing. In the past, we've done more where it's schoolyard pickup, where we don't allow people to pick their crew. And that was a little tricky because some people can't find crew or some people don't know people. But this year, we're like, okay, we're gonna let people sail with who they want as opposed to be assigned a beginner, intermediate, and advanced crew member and teach them that way. So I guess the answer to your question is that the beauty of WOW is that it's constantly changing. It's never the same. And we just, cater it to, sometimes we have to do beginners. we had a lot of demand for advanced stuff, which is why we did this year. So we just have to make sure we do something for everybody in rotations.
I don't think anybody understands how much work goes into putting this together.
Oh,
when do you take your last breath and just kind of...
Well, for me, I wasn't really supposed to do the WOW. I was going to do just the WOW this year, but they asked me to do a second year as sailing director, and I can't do sailing director and WOW.
Right.
So I'm training the person that's chairing this event. Her name's Robin Morphew, and I'm training her. And so 3 years ago, we just became friends. I was like, I'm overwhelmed. Can you help me with the WOW? And that was the first time anybody at Bayview asked her to do anything. And that's just like the first step into it. And now she is running regattas, and she might be the sailing director next year. And so it's great to volunteer, but it's important to get more people involved because you just get more out of sailing and your membership and everything in general. So, but yeah, it's a lot of work, and I've been doing it. I think I've ran like maybe 7 of the last 20, and it just kind of becomes clockwork.
Right.
So it's easier for me just to do it rather than have to teach someone, but it's better to teach people too because she's enjoying running it. So
thanks for your efforts.
Yeah.
So with Christine Nolan. Christine, you're just obviously competing in Women on Water. I don't know if competing is the right word, but certainly participating in it. You're a veteran coach. You've been all over the place as a sailor. Why do you come to something like this, the 20th anniversary?
So, the best thing about sailing is that you can always learn more. And I also, women in the sport, really something big to celebrate. And Dawn Riley, of course, well-renowned, always puts on a great clinic. Yeah. I want to get better. That's why I'm here. Okay. Always getting better.
Did you learn something today?
For sure.
What did you learn?
Yeah, we did. So I am not familiar with match racing. I've coached a lot of team racing, but this was match racing clinic. So really the first time I've watched match racing, but never done it myself. So it was very cool to put it in action on the boat. In
watching all the women come in and having, they're taking the boats apart and all the rest of it, the jocularity seems to be very male-like, female-like. Jocularity, I don't think is gender-rated. I think it's just the camaraderie of common interest. I think is really cool.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny watching. Everybody was very cooperative with each other and very supportive of each other, which may not be true on the men's side.
I think we're Corinthian, right? Sailors as a whole, men and women, for the most part.
Okay.
And in my experience, mostly.
Right.
Yeah, it was a great clinic. Good event.
Thanks. Yeah. We're talking briefly with Leslie Berryman, who is a first-year WOW participant. And one of the conversations that they had in the debrief with Dawn Riley was, there's such a level of, there's match racers, there's high school coaches, and then there's, people like yourself with a little less experience. And what'd you think?
I thought I held myself pretty well. I'm used to crewing on a bigger boat, and I'd never really had any experience with some of the smaller boats like this, but I did all right. We did all right. Our team did all right.
Thoughts on being around a bunch of women versus having some men around? Does that give you a little more confidence?
Yeah, it did, and everybody was very nice. A lot of people seemed to know each other, but my team, once we got going, we got along real well. Everybody seemed to be doing the same thing and enjoying it. So.
Would you recommend this to somebody who is limited at sailing, or would you tell them to give it a try?
I think it needs a little more advanced sailing than beginners, and maybe there's another version of it. I don't know, but I did all right.
What'd you learn?
That I like cruising a lot more.
Okay.
There's not as much. We're on this. We were forever tacking and jibing and pulling up the spinnaker and putting down the spinnaker and dropping things in the water, and it was just a little different.
Well, I was talking with Dawn Riley. Dawn, this is the 20th anniversary of the event here, and you've been involved. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
It's the 20th event, which I think is kind of cool. You've obviously coming back from New York, so just talk about the event and what you try to provide for the participants.
Yep. Well, I've done this quite a few times, and every year is a little bit different. This year we're back to match racing. I look back at some of my notes. In 2009, it was a 3-day event, so we tried to cram a whole lot of stuff in today, and I was frankly pleasantly surprised at the level of competition that was able to have when there was at least one person who had sailed once with her boyfriend and other people who have done some match racing tour stuff. So everybody was patient and lived up to the spirit of the event.
From an educational standpoint, when you've got such a diversity of talent and a diversity of experience, do you work to the bottom up, or do you work to the bottom, or do you try to find the middle?
We talk about it. You basically start with the basics and move to the more defined. And I talked about that in the very beginning. I said with the French team during the America's Cup, I yelled at them. I said, "You're not French, you're Swiss cheese," because they knew a whole lot of really good stuff, and then they just had big holes. So we're just trying to stuff the holes full of knowledge.
Are we gaining women to this sport like we should be?
Yeah, it was really cool today. Lots of young people, really, and some really good talent out there, so that was exciting to see.
Should there be a woman on water, or should it just be sailors on water?
You know what, the one thing here is because it was so diverse, if I had a bunch of guys out there, frankly, and I'm all about co-ed, but if there's a bunch of guys out there, they would have been a pain in the ass. And here, the women are laughing with each other, and it was just a different feel. So for this type of event, bringing people up, absolutely, it was awesome.
Bring us up to date on Oak Cliff. What's going on with Oak Cliff, and what you got coming up short term?
Well, in the middle of coaching this, I was keeping touch with the guys in the team, the girls that were sailing OC-86. So they just sailed an offshore race. So we had 26, 36, 46, 54 people racing the Ida Lewis distance race last night. So a lot's happening with Oak Cliff. We just finished the World Match Racing Tour Academy. We're moving into the grade 2s that are after the D Cup and match racing, and then we have the Triple Crown High Performance, and we're trying to save U.S. sailing in the Olympics. So just a little bit of stuff.
Keeping you busy.
Yeah.
The OC-86 is the old DeVos boat.
Right, WindQuest, and we've been doing quite well with it. I like to joke, women and children. People outside of the sport don't get that. But like everybody's under 35, maybe under 30, and a bunch of women.
I've never asked this question. Do you have another diversion besides sailing?
Yes. I like long walks on the beach. No, I do like cooking and gardening, but that's 5 minutes at a time.
Is there another sport besides sailing for you?
Oh yeah, no, I work out all the time, and I used to downhill race and throw shot put and discus, all that stuff. But right now, sailing's sucking most of my time.
Appreciate your time.
All right, thank you. For some reason you screw up, just get your ass back over here, tab, and enter. So what it says is you must be outside of the H, your end of the line, at 4 minutes. Another thing that they made because of mistakes in the past.
But number 8, keep your boat on the wind. But number 4, keep more tip trim. There you go.
Wanted to thank all the folks at Bayview for putting on Women on Water, and a special thanks certainly to Lori Bunn for putting all that together, and Lynn Kotwicki for keeping the vision of lasting for 20 years. Certainly Don Riley provided a lot of good information for women this weekend, and they learned a lot about match racing. So it was a great event, and we really appreciate that. And also a special thank you to Trey Rose for providing us with some images that hopefully made the story much more enjoyable to watch and to listen. And we hope you certainly took a little fun in watching all of that information. So hopefully we'll bring that to you next year. This is the third year we've covered it. So thank you again. Up next, we're going to talk to Lee Greening, and Lee's going to talk to us a little bit about the Edison Boat Club's 109th Friday night race for DYRA, and it's their annual regatta. Edison is no longer a regular club on the lake. It's, in fact, a paper club, but they put on a great race, and there's still a lot of members. About 60 boats participated, and then I think you'll enjoy that feature with Lee and all the visuals that come with that. And we'll finish it up with Dwayne Burgoyne, and we hope you like opinions, because that's kind of what the show is going to bring you, some hot stove discussion about various sailing subjects, and we'll leave this first event, we'll leave it a little quiet to listen to the conversation.
We're talking with Lee Greening, who is the Vice Commodore of the Edison Boat Club. We obviously have a big, huge race going on here on Friday night. Just explain what it is.
It's the annual Edison Boat Club yacht race, and we start off at Crescent Sail Yacht Club here. The finish will be later this evening at Bayview Yacht Club in the Detroit River, and then there'll be a party afterwards.
And the uniqueness is the Friday night, which has always been kind of a standard for it.
Yeah, for the Edison race, yeah.
About 60 boats?
I would say there's 60 boats. I haven't done a count, but yeah.
Yeah, we counted 58, so we got to figure
Yeah.
somewhere between 58 and 60. Lots of folks on the boats. Big race, and it's kind of cool on Friday night.
Yeah, gorgeous evening, so got lucky. I guess I'm in charge of the weather.
And be clear that Edison is now a paper club, but it's just as big as it
Yes.
was when it was operating.
Well, we don't have as many members, but
Okay.
there's still the dyed-in-the-wool members. Their boats are at other marinas. Some are actually here at Crescent. And people have joined Crescent Sail Yacht Club from Edison. And we're hoping down the road to possibly get a facility, but it's tough.
Yeah. Well, at least this gives a little bit of credibility to what Edison was and still is. So it's kind of cool to see that it's
Edison
still.
has been around. I believe this is our 109th year, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Well, thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
Hi, and welcome back again. We're getting a chance to talk to one of my old pals, Dwayne Burgoyne, who is the difference between Dwayne and myself is there's an actual trophy named after Dwayne, which makes him an expert in sailing. And I've been given a trophy. So there's a difference in that process. We want to try something a little bit different on the show. We just finished up with Nagimata going around the world on the loop, and we had kind of a, every 3 or 4 weeks we did that. We want to take some subjects. Dwayne and I have had wonderful conversations about sailing. We want to take a subject every week and kind of sort of pick it apart. It's not negative. It's not positive. It's just one of those kinds of things. And I can't think of a better guy to have a conversation with than Dwayne. So he's agreed to have the conversation with us. And we're going to start with the simplest of all conversations. That's certainly a big question in that discussion, Dwayne. Do you think we really understand what we think we know about sailing in this country?
I think we think we understand what we know about sailing in the country, but unfortunately, when we look at the powerhouse sailing countries, you look at Australia and New Zealand for offshore racing, you look at France and England. So here in the United States, we really don't have our arms around that. And I think one of the reasons for that is that there's so many other sports that the youth do. And as we move into adults, we look at 2 other sports other than sailing.
Okay. As I go across docks and I have conversations through this show with all kinds of people, statistically, there are around 950,000 registered sailboats in America. We're selling between 4,000 and 6,000 sailboats a year, depending upon what you talk about. The registered number gets kind of skewed because guys will have boats that bring it in from other parts of the country, especially on the upper end of the boats. The boating industry says it's in the last 10 years, in the last 5 years specifically, that we're down 18%. Cost is part of that. You've got small boat sailors, medium boat sailors, and large boat sailors. But what's really interesting in that same statistic, what do you think the average cost of a sailboat today to buy one is? Average over all of the large fleets. And let me use this as an example. We'll talk large boats and small boats. Small boats is anything you can't sleep on, and a large boat is anything you can sleep on. It's a pretty wide parameter. But what do you think on boats you can sleep on? What do you think the average price is?
I think that we're finding that even the small boats now, for a new small boat, you've interviewed the guys who sell Flying Scots. Flying Scots up to $35,000 or $40,000. This is for a 2-man boat. When we look at expensive boats, you can go out and buy a used 30-foot boat for $20,000 and be able to do Wednesday night racing all day long. So when you look at the 18% downsize for sailboats, there's many boats out there, and we're here in the Great Lakes, and many of the boats we see 70s and 80s boats sailing around all over the place. They're very competitive, and depending on what fleet you want to do, they're still very competitive. And you don't need to go out and buy $300,000 boats to go out and have a little fun on a Wednesday night or even on the weekends. I think we just saw with Tim Profit winning the Mackinac overall with a 45-year-old boat. It didn't take a $300,000 boat to win a Mackinac.
Well, the average cost of a new sailboat, that's not true. Let me make a better statement. The average cost of the boats that we're selling at this point are between $5,500 and $7,000. And that's from the American boating industry. Certainly there's, 6-figure boats and 7-figure boats on the upper end. But surprisingly, getting into sailing is not as expensive as we think it is based on those numbers. So why aren't more people sailing?
I don't think getting into sailing is expensive at all, because most people to get into sailing, the first thing they do is they walk on a boat on a Wednesday night and go out and go from one side of the boat to the other side of the boat and find out if it's something they want to do. And then typically they go out and buy a used boat. Nobody buys a boat for more than about $10,000. And then they make a little bit of investment on their sails and decide which way they want to go and what type of fleet they want to go on.
Okay. So in researching some of this, I would think that most, again, you have urban legend kind of things in my brain. If you look at the statistics from the U.S. boating industry, the factor is that if you look at, with the exception of boats that are $5,000 and less, the marketplace is really spread out. There's plenty of, there's about 15% that buy boats over 100 grand. But if you look at the categories from 0 to 15, 15 to 25, it's really spread out. So I was really surprised by that number. The 4 to 6,000, the 5 to 7,000 boats that I'm talking about that we're selling every year, those are new boats. Those don't account for old sales. But the marketplace really is spread out with all kinds of, you can buy an $8,000 boat, you can buy a $30,000 boat. You can also buy a $400,000 boat. But I think we've got this idea that the sport is more expensive than it is. The sad part is that 61% of those who are buying boats or those who are sailing more than 10 days a year are over the age of 55. That's surprising, and that's U.S. sailing numbers.
Those are U.S. sailing numbers. In 2011, I attended the U.S. Sailing Symposium in Chicago, and they asked us to come in with the average age of our yacht club. So a gentleman and I sat down, and we tried to figure out what the average age. Of course, we were guessing the average age of the yacht club. We came in at 55 years old for the average age of the North Cape Yacht Club. We went to Chicago. We submitted our numbers for 55 years old. They looked at the numbers from 10 years previous. The numbers from 10 years previous was 54 years old. So the average age is really not increasing that much, but we also see that there's a lot of young sailors that are not coming into the club. I think that's one of the reasons, is that they're looking at other sports. And back to the yacht club is that a lot of people in the day-to-day life think that sailboat racing, yacht racing, if you will, is very expensive. I think when they think of yacht clubs, they think of the gentlemen in blue blazers walking around. It's not blue blazers. Most of the yacht clubs are not that way.
But that's the image.
That is the image.
So if we've done a poor job as a sport of really informing people. Now let's throw a couple things in here. We had 2 junior sailing programs that are no longer in existence. One at Detroit Yacht Club and one at North Star. They no longer participate. So I went back and checked to see if the numbers would grow. Interestingly enough, the only junior sailing program that's grown in our area has been the Challenge the Wind program, which is an urban center program that runs out of the Detroit Boat Club. We're going to do a couple of things on them, and they've lost their home because they're going to tear down the Detroit Boat Club, and there's a whole thing. But my point is, if you look at the other area yacht clubs, their numbers didn't increase despite the fact that 2 closed. So we're not growing. And so my point of this entire conversation, do we worry about our image? Do we worry about the subject matter? Or is it just something that has been sort of the same kind of things? If we'd have had this conversation 30 years ago, it would have been the same thing.
I'm not really sure. I wasn't here 30 years ago, but the junior sailing program is on the downside. I've had the privilege of being the ILY Commodore, and at what we call Junior Bay Week. In 2015, we had 160 some kids. This year, we had 90 kids attend Bay Week. So it's a downswing, but also we did suffer through COVID, and a lot of the kids, 13, 18-year-old kids, were in Optimus when COVID happened, and they didn't get into the Optimus, and they didn't move forward into the lasers and the 420s, and we also do thistles. But so you're seeing a bit of a downswing, but many yacht clubs are very cyclical on their junior programs. You get a good leader in a junior program, you see more kids come into the program. You were testimony to that. Bring a friend. There's some people down in Columbus doing this bring a friend type thing. And it's very attractive. We have programs called More Kids on Sailboats. It's a bring a friend type program. We think you hit something when you did the bring a friend. Sometimes if you look at the minivans going to the soccer game, one teenager begot two. You always bring a friend, and it makes it more fun.
Would you be surprised to find out that boat sales went up 40% during the COVID because that's one of the places you could go and do things? Boat sales were at all-time high during COVID because you had something to be able to put your family on a boat. You could go do some things. That shocked me. And the next year, 2021, that number went right back to where it was.
Yep. And if you look at RV sales, it was exactly during COVID. People had money. It was fun they wanted to have. And they went out and they bought a lot of new boats and a lot of new RVs.
I'm asking this question and having this conversation because you and I have had this conversation a couple of times. And I just wonder sometimes, and I'll use the other example. We started doing this show about 2.5 years ago to give publicity to junior sailing prior to the COVID pandemic. I wanted to be able to do some things. I'm not a junior sailing director. I was because they wanted a coach to take over the premise. And we were just trying to get some publicity. From that came this show. So my background in sailing is limited in terms of racing, but I've had the opportunity to, do 110 shows and sit at the foot of some of the best sailors in the world. And my point I'm trying to make here is that the folks covering sailing, when I go to these events and I see, the guys, I've been at Super Bowls and I've been at other kind of events, the folks covering sailing are kind of pathetic. And if a guy with a computer can do what I've done, just think about it. It's not a great shakes about the thing. And so I think sometimes it's insulated. And now having been it's sort of on the outside looking in, that's why I was asking this question, because I wonder sometimes if I don't know that we have to worry about where sailing's going, because obviously it's been here for a long time. But it's interesting talking because I don't know that people really understand the numbers. And maybe because it's a participatory sport, that's part of it. I don't know. Your thoughts?
I really don't have the thoughts. I mean, I know what we do, and we're watching it, like especially at the junior level programs. It's very difficult to get volunteers, whether it be a chairman or a director or anything like that. You don't see the people wanting to put that much time and effort into it. When you see the programs with the time and effort, you see the numbers come up. But we also see a lot of people that are just going through the motions, if you will, and you don't see the numbers coming up because the kids aren't having as much fun. They just go find something else to do.
Are we going to be okay with yacht clubs, you think, 10 years from now? Or do you think you think it's the same as it was previous 10 years?
I think we'll be fine at yacht clubs. I think that we'll replenish ourselves a little bit as we get through the COVID years. We're still suffering from the COVID years, but I think we'll replenish ourselves. Now, we've been trying all kinds of different programs, like the high school sailing programs, very popular up in your Detroit area, Country Day and boats like that. But down in my area in Monroe, Michigan, we can't get them to move on a high school program at all.
We're going to do a story next week. The Grosse Pointe Educational Foundation just spent $250,000 to buy 20 matched 420s, so the intercollegiate and the high school programs could all have the same boats. It's going to run out of the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club. We're going to do the inside of how it works, and I guess a 420E is the exact title on the boat. So it'll be interesting to check that out. This isn't so much about nothing. We're going to do this every week, and I want to be able to give a little bit more hot stove discussion. We were actually going to talk about guys who are in races who never register, and it was kind of after I read the Facebook thing. But I want to be able to take this and have a substantive conversation that maybe somewhere along the line, somebody's talking about on Wednesday or Thursday. And you are certainly one of the experts in this Great Lakes area, so I appreciate your friendship, and most importantly the time we get a chance to talk about stuff. So this is just a kickoff. I don't think we've solved any great problems. It's sort of the conversation you have on the back of the boat as you're cruising across the lake to some extent. So hopefully we'll make this a regular edition, and we'll try to pick some subjects that matter and maybe be a little more specific about what we're trying to do.
Sure, like helping it. Being a retired guy, this is what I get to do all the time, and I get to get into the part of the sports from juniors all the way up into the adults. Pretty excited to be working with some of the single-handed guys now too. It's a growing end of the sport, the short-handed sailing right now.
Okay. Well, maybe it's one of those subjects we can kind of put together and have that conversation. We'll bring this back next week. I appreciate your time.
and we'll certainly put this up in the next couple of days and see what transpires. So thanks for your time.
All right. Have a good week.
Not sure you agree with the opinion that we had, but it was just one of those kind of, we hope you're having a discussion over the water cooler or maybe on the end of the dock, a little bit about sailing, and maybe we can provide some fodder for discussion about how terrific sailing is and how much we all enjoy it. So I wanted to thank Dwayne for his opportunity. I certainly wanted to thank you again, too, Lee Greening, to talk with us a little about it. And then again, all the folks at Bayview, Lynn Kotwicki for bringing the event here to the community for 20 years. Lori Bunn for putting all that work together with all of her staff and all those folks. And Don Riley, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And again, Trey Rose, thank you for bringing us those great pictures. We hope you enjoy all this. We have quite a bit coming on this next week. They'll be around for probably 3 or 4 more shows before the weather gets a little colder and we turn our interest to the winter time. But for the moment, we still got time to sail. Enjoy the weather, and we'll see you next week.